You can follow in your program. There'll be an outline of the agenda. The straw polls have formally been closed, and there have been some questions about the protocol on that, and I think, to be intellectually honest, it's such a tight timeline tonight, we felt it was best to go ahead and close the straw polls. But we still wanted to give each and every one of you the opportunity to hear some of our gubernatorial candidates. We just received word that Congressman Gresham Barrett is waylaid. Apparently he's been grounded in an airplane in the upstate, and he tried desperately to be here with us this evening, and he is not going to be part of our discussions with the gubernatorial candidates. We are really fortunate to have 3 of our 4 candidates here tonight. As I said, Congressman Barrett is waylaid, and he sends his deepest regret. Each candidate will have 3 minutes to speak, and we're going to be calling the candidates by alphabetical order, and I'll ask that each of you make your way up front as the person in front of you concludes their comments. As most of you know, first Congressman Gresham Barrett, because he could not be here, he wanted you to know that he sends his regrets. Our Lieutenant Governor, Bauer, will be called first, and he's going to make 3 minutes just to give you a sense to touch him before we actually begin the primary process. So, Lieutenant Governor Bauer, if you can be making your way up here. And I'll tell you a little bit about our Lieutenant Governor. He was elected in 2002, and after serving in both the House and the Senate, he was the youngest person ever elected to that position. Under his leadership, the role of the Lieutenant Governor is expanded to include the Office of the Aging, where he's responsible for looking after the interest of our senior population. Ladies and gentlemen, please join with me as we welcome our gubernatorial candidate and our Lieutenant Governor, Bauer.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, many of you have already decided who you're going to vote for governor. We got a lot of great candidates running. But I tell you more than anything, whoever our next candidate is, elected in the primary, they'll be our next governor. But we've got to re-identify who the Republican Party is. See, for many years, we were the party of personal responsibility, and we believed in rewarding those that made sacrifices and worked hard. But for many years in the last few, we have continued to make it more and more difficult for the average person to decide the difference between a Republican and a Democrat. And I think it's time, first and foremost, that we get back to what made this country and what made this party the greatest party in the greatest country in the world, and that was rewarding those that worked. And we have a system whereby now we continue to reward people that just don't feel like adding to the program. They continue to do more and more living off the hard works of the taxpayers. And I think it's time we stand up for the folks that work in this state and in this country. I can tell you another thing. We don't need to let the media drive our vision. We need to have the backbone and the courage to say, you know what? We realize we got more people in this country voting for a living than we do working for a living, and somebody's got to have the courage to stand up and talk about it, and that's called the Republican Party. See, the Democratic Party has made their way on giving more out. That's how they grew their party. They gave out more goods and services, and it grew their party. But I can tell you, you talk to our base, you talk to the people that support this party, they want to see us get back to the fundamental things that made this party different. And I can tell you, as I run for governor, and we've got 45 days left, and I'm proud of what we're talking about. We're talking about a difference. Look, we all believe in helping people through difficult times. Don't let the message get clouded. Everybody has difficult times. I'm one of those people that came from a single-family home. But there's a difference between hard work and people that are going through difficult times and flat-out people that have learned to game the system. We've got to get back to the basics that made this country and this state strong. Look, we cannot financially afford to keep feeding these systems. Many people are going to come before you and say, I believe in less government. I want to reduce your taxes. They never tell you how they're going to reduce your taxes. Look, we shouldn't be running state rest areas or visitor centers. We ought to lease those out. We shouldn't be paying an architect every time we build a new school. We ought to have template drawings, just like they do for Walmart or Kmart or McDonald's. We shouldn't continue to pay for schools for the traffic control, just like the governor said. We ought to let state constables do it. Cost us nothing. We've got to get back to what the core responsibilities are in state government and city and county for that matter, because there's some elected officials as well at that level of government, and do those things and do them very well. And we've got to break up this cycle of people thinking that the government is there to solve every problem they had. Thank you for what you do to make this party strong. Thank you for being here tonight. And I thank you for being a part of the greatest party in the greatest country in the world. God bless each and every one of you.
Next is Representative Nikki Haley. Nikki has served in the House since 2004, and during that time has made government transparency a priority. She's been honored by Friend of the Taxpayers by the South Carolina Association of Taxpayers and has a lifetime A rating from the South Carolina Club for Growth, the National Rifle Association, and the Palmetto Family Council. Ladies and gentlemen, give a warm welcome to Nikki Haley.
Thank you, and it's a pleasure to be here. And this is a great room for a lot of reasons, but the reason this is a great room is because this is the room that's going to take the gubernatorial nominee from June 22nd and carry it to November so that we continue to be the Republican state that we need to always be. But I'm going to ask for your help today because we need to take it a step further. We've got a lot of Republicans that have learned the talking points but haven't learned the actions associated with the talking points. We have seen state and federal elected officials that are flawed in the way that they've behaved. The federal level bailout culture started on the Republicans' watch with the $700 billion bailout of Wall Street. And I'd like to thank today Senator DeMint for being the only congressional delegation member to vote against the Wall Street bailout. On the state level, we've seen a Republican House and Senate grow government by $1 billion a year. We've seen them stand in the way of transparency, and we've seen them defend the status quo. South Carolina can no longer elect Republicans. We need to elect conservatives. Just for a second, imagine a South Carolina that's not known just for its beautiful beaches, its crumbling schools, and its bare-knuckle politics, but for being the state that through a good conservative government brought faith and trust back to the Republican Party. Imagine a South Carolina that takes care of its small businesses and creates an environment where businesses flock to our state and every state in the country says, that's how you do it. Imagine a South Carolina where the teachers' union no longer stands in the way of a child's education, where merit pay and parental choice and a level playing field for our kids, that we have a level playing field for our kids no matter where they're born and raised. Imagine a South Carolina where government spends what it needs and no more, where our agencies are efficient and effective and actually work for their customers who are the taxpayers of the state of South Carolina. Imagine a South Carolina where health care costs go down, not up, where Medicaid fraud and abuse is cut out, where tort reform protects our doctors and patients, and OBGYNs and neurosurgeons flock to our state because it makes sense for them to practice here. Imagine a South Carolina where our government is open and responsive to our citizens, where votes are on the record, where spending is online, where incomes of our legislators are disclosed, and term limits ensure that we have a constant influx of fresh faces, fresh voices, and fresh ideas that work for the people of our great state. And imagine a South Carolina that's no longer last in the things where we want to be first, and first where we don't want to be last, but is a source of pride for every South Carolinian, a turnaround model for every state, and a beacon of hope for every American. That's what I want for South Carolina. That's what I know we can do together for South Carolina, and I hope that you'll join me June 8th to do that for South Carolina. Thank you very much.
Last but certainly not least is our Attorney General, Henry McMaster. General McMaster was elected in office in 2002 and previously served as our party chairman. He's a former U.S. attorney, and during his time in office, he has focused his efforts in combating both white-collar crime, internet predators, successfully convicting over 100 of them. Ladies and gentlemen, Attorney General Henry McMaster.
and I have loved every